Hello. So usually when I talk about seasonal jobs, I'm talking about jobs we're doing outside, but today it is the beginning of February. It is feeling a bit spring-like, but not very spring-like. This is an indoors job, and I will confess, it is one of my favourite jobs in the whole world. So I have coffee, I'm ready. This is the most blissful, truly blissful times in my gardening year, and that is going through my seed boxes. I say boxes, I do have multiple boxes. So obviously the seed that I sell is in beautiful racking in my studio, so when people order seed from me, it's lovely. It's like those library reference cards. I just ruffle through, find the ones I want, put them in the post. They're all ready to go. I have a fridge full of seed, which is my seed I've produced, seed that I'm getting ready to package. Seeds are generally, in terms of storage, the best thing is cool and dry, so seed fridges are amazing, although I do appreciate not everyone's going to have a seed fridge. And then I have seeds sort of scattered all over the place. I do try and make sure they are in the studio rather than in the house, because really it's about keeping seeds cool. I don't have any central heating, who am I kidding? This is not a warm house. But at the same time, do not leave them in the kitchen, greenhouse, windowsills, anywhere where your seeds are going to be in direct sunlight. So what you've got today is the miscellaneous box. And these are the seeds that I haven't really sorted out yet and I haven't got in order yet. And so today is the day that I have a bit of a rummage. Now today is the day because we're starting to get into the time where I want to be thinking about sowing my perennials. One of my top tips is to not sow too early in the season. I think lots of people get very sort of het up around the middle of March where it's still super chilly, but people seem to be doing all sorts of things with polytunnels and heat mats and you get a bit fear of missing out. Don't. Just wait until the weather's ready. But there are a couple of things that will really benefit from starting early. Two big reasons for that, one of which is there are some things that have a really long growing season. So in terms of annuals, Cabea, the cup and saucer vine, gorgeous, white sort of purple, not mad keen on the purple, but I'll live with it if that's what I've got. I have bought lots of white this year. It will just take forever to get from seed to bloom. And so I had a message from someone last year saying, I've grown these beautiful vines, but they're just not flowering. And I said, patience, you must just wait. But they're not hardy, so you will lose them at the frost. So what happens is you wait, and then they come out in sort of end of September, beginning of October, and then before you know it, they've gone. But if you start them really early, the earlier you start the seed, the earlier they will flower, the longer flowering season you get before the frost comes. So the first tip is for any seeds that have a long flowering season, a long seed to bloom stretch. And I do include in that some perennials. I'm going to talk a lot about perennials today because we should all be growing perennials. And some of those are going to be quite slow to get going. I'm not a great believer in rushing plants before they're ready, so some of them will need a bit of like maybe a year to get going and really get established before they flower, and you shouldn't rush them through that. But some will do first year flowering, but only if you get them started in time. So I'll be talking about perennials and I'll be fishing my perennials out of my box. The last one that I just want to mention is, and I thought I'd missed this for this year, but I haven't, is seeds that need chilling. So I do a lot of my chilling in the fridge, but there are some, and I will name and shame delphiniums particularly, that for some reason they just really like the natural cold. And so I'm going to put some of those out in some compost, out in the cold, because I've checked the weather forecast and there is a -3, -2 big spell coming next week. And I'm not going to miss it and I'm going to be ready for it. So that. So it's a bit like doing the laundry this. You sometimes just tip it all out and see what you've got. So my first sweep through my seed box is always going to be, is there anything empty in there? And that sounds mad, but when you've sown some seeds, very often I will keep the seed packet for a while because, you know, sometimes you need the instructions about what to do next with them. These are Chiltern delphiniums, they've got quite a lot of instructions on them, and I want to keep that until I'm sure that my plants are good to go. But what that often means is I just shove the packet back in there. So I have done a full sweep of this one and taken out everything that is empty. So there's a very old Orlea grandiflora, one of mine in there, which is empty, so that can go. Also, anything that I can't identify. So quite often I have to just shake my seed box upside down somewhere because seed packets split and they just leak everywhere, and for some reason it's always larkspur for me. I'm always fishing larkspur out the bottom, or phacelia or beans. So anything that I can't identify, anything that looks like it's, you know, just leaked out of the packet and I don't know what it is, that goes. The next sweep is anything old. Now, seed does really vary in terms of viability. So viability just means, is it still going to germinate? Is it still going to grow? So even though seeds look like they're inert, they're actually alive. They are just full of the potential for life. But if they're in conditions that they don't like, so they're in sunlight, if they're too warm, they will get to a stage where they're just not going to come back to life and turn into plants. And there is real variability in terms of what the viability of a seed is. So Dorcas carota, wild carrot, or any of the kitchen garden carrots, parsnips, lots of things like that, short, like really short. You so need fresh seed. Bupleurum, I really struggle to get it. That's why I don't sell it, because I really struggle to get it to germinate, because unless you're literally shaking it off the plant, and even then it's a bit tricky, you are always going to struggle to get really fresh seed. So anything that I know has got quite a short viability and I know is a bit old, I will then take out. If it's really precious, I might give it a go, but don't invest your heart and soul in it because you will only be disappointed. So there we go. So that leaves us with seed that I think is good and is going to be ready to grow, and I'm going to go through and pick out the things that I know need to be sown soon. So for example, I have in this box, I went a bit wild. I think I was influenced by Instagram, like so many things. I went a bit wild last year on cosmos. Mixed feelings about cosmos. I love it, of course I love it. It's so abundant, it's so wonderful. It's a bit tricky to collect the seed from because sometimes it cross-pollinates and some of it's F1, and actually I find it a little bit difficult in terms of that. But people were talking about cosmos on Instagram and I got all seduced, and so I bought Chiltern seeds, bought lots of cosmos. There is no point me sowing that in February. It won't like it, I won't like it, it'll sit there sulking, it'll never be the same again. Anything that likes the heat, so half-hardies, tenders, anything tropical, do not try and sow in February. You're just wasting everyone's time. So I'm going to put anything that I know is a half-hardy or should be sown in April to one side, and I'm going to really fish out the things that want a long growing season and starting in February. Now most of those things I know are going to be labelled hardy perennial. I'm not even starting hardy annuals yet, I am starting hardy perennials though. So I've got some lovely, again, Chiltern seed ones. I do also have, this is just absolutely incredible, this I haven't dared open it yet, it's, I will, but not yet, which is a package that came from Ukraine, an incredible clematis and peony nursery called Linden Grove Gardens, and I bought some clematis seed from her. And I'm really pleased it arrived now because actually I really wanted to do my clematis seed at the beginning of February because, again, really needs a good long run up in terms of germination. I am going to give it a go with starting it warm, but it might need a warm, cool, warm, chilling cycle, in which case I need a bit of extra time because it will have 2 weeks in the kitchen, and then it'll have 3 weeks in the fridge, and then we'll have to get it out again. So this is where I start making piles of the things that have similar germination requirements, essentially. So I'm going to make my life really easy by putting all of my clematis together. These are not your bog standard clematis, by the way. These are beautiful. So I've got another one here, which is Integrifolia, which is from Plant World Seeds, Newton Abbot. Not very far away from me, so I do use them a lot. Love them. Have a look at their website. Really, some wacky stuff on there. I got my clematis fusca from there as a plant, and it's the funnest thing in the world. Brown, furry bell clematis. Can't beat it. It's amazing. Up there with, I think, my favourites. The other thing I have a lot of this year, which I'm delighted about, is Aquilegia. Again, one for really good for starting early. They do like that bit of cold. So last year, I don't know if you know that I went to the National Collection of Aquilegia, and Carrie Thomas and I wrote a book together on Aquilegia. So I feel like I know my Aquilegia now. But bless her, she did give me a lot of these little envelopes of seed. So lovely, so sweet. So they've got little descriptions on, and then there's one of them that just says, like the one you liked, which I thought was so lovely. So I've got some seed that she saved specially for me, which I will be starting. She starts in pots in a cold greenhouse with lots of grit, and I'm going to try a few like that, but I'm also going to try the bag method. I will do a whole new video on the bag method, but I just wanted to show you where I might be starting that one. I will probably, if you can see, I've already opened this one, and that's because I think it is very often worth doing half a packet in one way and then saving it just to check. If you have a zero germination for some reason, so a couple of years ago, I did all my sweet peas, literally all of them, every single one out of a packet, and the mouse got the lot. And then I had nothing left. So I learned my lesson, and I will do half a packet, one method, save the next half, maybe do it a different method, maybe just see if I need a backup plan for mice or just a failure. So Carrie Thomas does have some Aquilegia seed on her website, which is Touchwood Aquilegia. But I also, of course, I have to recommend, and I have quite a few of these this year, Green and Gorgeous, which are lovely. And the really lovely thing about Green and Gorgeous, I did about, I think, 6 orders or something, because Rachel kept putting new things on the website, and I kept having to pay postage every time. I'll put my Aquilegia on the Aquilegia pile. Because obviously Rachel is bringing out her book on perennial cuts in March, and she is going to come and talk to us in Gather, which I honestly, I'm so thrilled about. She is such a legend of the flower world. She was, such a forerunner of all of this, and I think, she's proving her worth in terms of, I really think we should be really focusing on perennials, stabilising the soil, all of that stuff that we get with growing annuals about all the compost bags we buy and all of that sort of stuff that goes with it. It's time to do something a little bit different. With that in mind, I'm also so I've got a clematis pile, an Aquilegia pile, just moving along, I haven't got enough room. I'm going to have a campanula pile. So for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been having the most miserable, unrequited love affair with campanula. I hope this is the year that campanula learn to love me back, because they haven't so far. But I have 10 different sorts of campanula, and not your big bell campanulas, can't be doing with those. These are the punctata types. They're the sort of the lovely long cup types. I get them to germinate, I get them to small plants, I plant them out and they just don't do anything. So this is the year. This is the year I'm going to get this right. They are tiny, tiny seeds as well, so I'm going to be a little bit careful with them. So where we've got to is I have got piles now of things that I know need very similar conditions, or Aquilegia. I've got lots of ones that I know will just germinate warm. But what I really recommend is if you find yourself constantly looking at your seed packets, reading the back of seed packets, feeling overwhelmed and just a bit like you have to keep Googling everything, something that I have developed is just a sheet that I find really useful for me. And on this is when you're getting your seed box out and you know you've got different types of things, this table, and I will put a link to the table in below so you can use just, it's literally, it's a Word document, there is absolutely nothing special about this at all. It gives you the option to put the name of the flower in the first column, the method that you're going to start germination with in the second one, and then two other columns that they don't always put on the back of seed packets, and the one that you often need to go and look up, which is temperature, and that's either warm or cycles of warm, cool, warm, or just pre-chilling, delphinium, pre-chilling, bells of Ireland, freeze them, and then light. So again, I know because I've done lots of Aquilegia that they do like a little bit of light on them. I don't know about clematis, even though I've already written this down. So that says don't use heat, do not use artificial heat. And then you can just fill in those conditions. And the reason this bit of the table is so big is because I've got columns for each month from February to October, where you can put a little star for when you sow it, and then you can put a mark for when you think it's going to be in flower. If you are growing for your own cut flowers, it can be worth putting filler foliage or flower in that, so you know that you've got a mix, so you don't end up with only fillers in August and only flowers in March, for example. So that is how I sort out my seed tin. And do you know what I do sometimes? Is I pour it all back in, and then the next day I get it all out and do it all again. That's how much I love doing this. It makes me happier than anything else in the world. But time is ticking on in terms of the year. I know we are only the beginning of February, but it does feel like spring is going to be on us before we know it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some labels, some bags, some Ziploc bags, and start some of the ones that want very early germination. And I will do a whole new video on how to do the bags, so feel free to watch that next.